This episode is probably the most frustrating one yet, because it's so close to hitting gold. There's a really interesting idea put forth in this episode that they don't fully capture, and they could have tweaked around a few things. And if they did, this episode, in my opinion, would have been something truly special, which is the first time I'm even remotely saying anything along those lines about this reboot. Because this reboot, at its best, has been competent and an inoffensive thing to watch in the background, you know, in my opinion at least. Of course, you can disagree. And at its worst, I've just struggled to even watch it. But this episode was so close to actually capturing some of the magic that the original had. So basically, to recap, and I don't usually do recaps because it's like, if you're watching an episode review, it's safe to say you've watched the episode, but this time it kind of warrants it because I want to say what I would have changed. So the whole episode rolls around the idea that Misaki doesn't want to join the CardFight Club, but that rubs Aichi and the others the wrong way, so they find a way of trying to convince her to join. And so Korin comes to the idea of just challenging her to a card fight and switching the rules basically so that if Misaki wins, she's allowed to not join the club, and if Korin wins, Misaki has to join. It's then found out and explained that the reason Misaki didn't want to join is because she was embarrassed, because she may or may not have feelings for Aichi. Now, this is okay. You know, what we got given was okay, but here's how I would have tweaked things. Near the beginning of the episode, it's pointed out in one of this reboot's only moments of self-awareness that Team Q4 is pointless. They make an offhanded comment about how, like, basically, the others are like, oh yeah, Misaki, how do you know her and everything? And Aichi thinks for a minute, and he's like, well, we were in Team Q4 together, and I'm like, yep, you are. And he's like, that means that we, you know, card fighted together, kind of, during the NWO tournament. I'm like, correct. And then that's it. That's all they mention. And I'm like, oh my god, he's right. Aichi and Misaki haven't really interacted in this entire reboot at all. In fact, the entirety of Q4 has had almost no interaction or development. In the original, right, in the first couple story arcs, by the time we hit the end of the Asia circuit, I completely believed and was sold upon the idea that Team Q4 were best friends. Maybe not Kai, but Kamui, Misaki, and Aichi were like fucking best friends. They hanged out all the time, and they even had like interactions and moments where fucking like Misaki was starting to laugh at Kamui's jokes, because they had slowly built up those characters over that much time that I just believed and was sold on the idea that they had finally become friends. This reboot doesn't have that, mainly because, I'm going off on a whim here, Q4 probably wasn't in the manga, because the only time that Q4 is even relevant, at least as a team, not talking about the individual characters of course, is during the filler arc that wasn't in the manga, which leads me to believe that Q4 was only included in the first place for the sake of including them. You know, this is a nostalgia pandering reboot, so you gotta have the nostalgia pandering, you know? And what's more nostalgia pandering than Team Q4, eh? But Team Q4 don't actually do anything here, especially considering it's very heavily, like, explained to us multiple times that Aichi joined and participated in the Asia circuit on his own, not as Team Q4, which I prefer him joining as a team and everything, since I think that makes Aichi's rise to the top more believable. You know, the fact that Aichi's biggest strength is the idea that he relies on his friends and trusts his friends, and so his rise to the top because of that fit more, in my opinion. Like, I don't really see Aichi as like the lone badass type, and in fact I don't want Aichi to be the lone badass type because that kind of goes against the entire point of his character. But basically, this episode, for a second, while Aichi, like, finally realizes, oh my god, I don't actually know Misaki, the reboot becomes self-aware. It's like, oh my god, we haven't actually developed these characters. And I'm like, oh my god, are they actually going to use this for anything? Not really. Kind of, but not really. When I said I would change something, basically, I would change the card fight. I would make it so that Korin isn't the one that challenges him. Maybe Korin gets the idea to challenge Misaki, but then Aichi steps in and is like, no, I'll do it. And so the two of them have that card fight and everything, and either one wins. I don't care who wins. But because of this card fight, because they have fun card fighting, the two of them decide, you know what? Misaki decides that she will join or consider joining the CardFight Club, and Aichi realizes that he's in the wrong and that he should take a step back, and that when Misaki says she wants to be left alone, he will leave her alone. And because of that, the two of them come to a compromise, and Misaki happily joins the CardFight Club. And also I'd make it a two-parter, because boy, this episode was too condensed. Like, the reboot in general has been too fast and condensed, but this episode, more than any other, needed to be a two-parter. So I think that Aichi needed to do something here. Now, again, I understand the idea that this is doing what the original did, the thing I praised the original for doing, and that's the whole Aichi is the strongest character now, so don't actually show him in card fights because you want to build up the tension, you want to build up like the hype for when he does finally card fight again, and instead in between then we'll show like Naoki and Korin card fights, you know. And I like that idea on paper, but well, this anime was even self-aware in this very episode that Aichi hasn't really done much, and so this could have been the episode where Aichi and Korin actually have a personal bond with each other. They actually do become friends in a natural way, instead of having Korin jump in and solve everything. Now, this isn't me going, oh, I don't want an episode where Korin card fights Misaki and the two of them have, you know, dynamics and interactions with each other. No, I just think that should have come a little bit later on. I think that having an episode where they do finally realize this, and that Aichi's kind of been a dick, because this episode has kind of failed, because this episode wants you to side with Korin and Aichi and be like, fuck yeah, Misaki's joining the CardFight Club. But this episode did a too good a job of making me sympathize with Misaki, and made me think like, no, just leave her alone. Like, because they keep pestering her and being like, please join the club. And they have the bit where Aichi runs up to her and confesses how much she wants her to be in the club. And then Korin approaches Misaki and changes to a card fight, and so on and so forth. And it's like, just fucking leave her alone, mate. I get this is an anime, but in real life, if I asked like a friend or someone to hang out with me or join a club with me or whatever, and they said, nah, I would leave them. I'd be like, yeah, sure, fair enough. And Aichi and the others just don't leave her alone, and it just kind of makes me feel bad for Misaki, because it's like, can she just not live her life, please? Like, I mean, I get the whole point is, oh, but they sense that something's up with her and there's some kind of ulterior motive, and there was. Said ulterior motive was Misaki is embarrassed. That's it. But it's still a bit like, come on guys, when she says no, just give us some space for a few minutes at least, you know? Especially when we start to realize, oh shit, there's a reason other than her being embarrassed about Aichi that she might not want to have joined. And that's the fucking parent thing. Once again, this episode gets so close to becoming self-aware of my criticisms that we never gave Misaki's parents dying any closure. And this episode brings that back for a second and is like, oh wait, shit. Her parents were in charge of this and owned this card fight club, and then they died. There's a good chance that Misaki would relate card fighting to her parents' death. Maybe she doesn't want to be around card fighting 24/7. Like, she already works there and spends her free time card fighting and all this other stuff. You really think she wants to spend her school time card fighting as well? Especially when, again, it reminds her of her parents. Maybe Aichi, you should fuck off for a second. And this is coming from someone who really likes Aichi as a character. But this kind of crossed the line for me. And I know this is one that most other people probably wouldn't have even thought of. And it's probably not even Aichi's fault necessarily. But yeah, card fighting reminding Misaki of her dead parents and Aichi running up to her and guilt tripping her into joining the club is a really dick move. Which is funny because in the previous episode, I was going on about how much I hated how they were handling Misaki, but now I think they're handling Misaki so well that it's making Aichi look like a dick. And so again, I would fix this by having the two of them having a slow, thoughtful card fight where they realize their own flaws and come to a compromise. You know, characters falling out and making up again. That's a thing you can do in anime. Yeah, no, that's the main thing with this episode. I think this episode tried to be a little bit self-aware, but I think if it was a little bit more self-aware, then we could have got somewhere. And also, I don't like how they have this amazing premise and everything, and they go the blandest possible route with it, and that's the love triangle. Really, guys? And I'm allowed to say that now too, because the anime itself, like, even shows a diagram and everything. Like, look, it's a love triangle. And that's dumb. And even the way it's handled on Corin's side is as well. Because in the original, I think it's safe to say, people may not agree with me, but I feel like it's pretty plain to see. In the original, Corin falls for Aichi. You see how she acts all weird around him, and he even starts to realize himself. She falls for him. And a popular idol trope, which is even mentioned in this episode, is the idea that idols, especially in real life, aren't allowed to have romantic interests because it makes the fans jealous, because idol fans are the absolute worst. And so because of this, like, forbidden love is a thing within idols. And so every idol story ever always touches upon the forbidden love thing because it's dramatic and everything. But the thing I love about Link Joker and the thing I love about Ultra Rare is they defy those tropes. Because Corin falls for Aichi and everything, but the idol thing isn't really mentioned. At least not to a big extent, you know? And I liked that because it's like, oh, cool. We're actually, we're going against the grain here. That's what makes CardFight Vanguard stand out as a franchise. It does go against the grain, and I really enjoyed that. But immediately, in this very, right as this love triangle arc starts, Rekka just steps in, which I like her new ponytail, by the way. Rekka steps in and is like, the idols aren't allowed to have love and stuff, and exposition. Yeah, I hope it doesn't get dwelled on so much, but again, this anime is calling it to the forefront, and when you have correctly established a character as complex as Misaki as well as you have in this episode, going the love triangle route is kind of the most bland way you can go with it. I don't know. But other than that, this was a good episode. Assume if there's any aspect of this episode that I haven't mentioned, just assume I liked it, because the main kind of meat and potatoes of the episode is the part that's frustrating and the part I've already been talking about. Everything else was fine, by the way. I mean, I don't like they skip through the card fight, but that's why I suggested they should make this one, of all of them, a two-parter.